EA has definitely put DICE into overtime lately. Delivering blockbuster, tech-heavy first-person shooters every single year must be hard, and that's not including DLC that they must deliver on time. In the past, DICE had no issue delivering timely, well-structured DLC for their games. Most of it was spaced out properly and helped people stay invested into the vanilla games. Better yet, many expansions altered the games to shape new gameplay experiences, as with Close Quarters and Naval Assault. That's the great part about DLC, this ability to extend the possibility of what was possible with the base game, not just to add more stuff. After all, an extension is only as good as what it makes better. As Battlefield 1 comes to a close with its last DLC, Apocalypse, the Battlefield community reflects on if that was achieved. Has the money I spent given me new Battlefield 1 experiences, or have I simply gotten an extension of what was already on offer? How do people truly feel about the game now that everything is available and shown off? There are a lot of people who stand by Battlefield 1, and that is great. But to many people, Battlefield 1 will end up being the Battlefield game that maybe took a few steps backward when it comes to its post-release content schedule. Not just in terms of when the content was released and in what interval, but how the game has advanced. In this video, we'll see why the Battlefield 1 DLC was truly perplexing, why the quality of it wasn't on par with previous installations, and attempt to find a reason as to why this occurred. Ultimately, we may want to answer a tough question. Should we expect better for Battlefield 2018? And most importantly, will that game suffer the same fate? In the beginning, Battlefield 1 was a beautifully chaotic game. It had everything you wanted in a Battlefield game, and probably everything you did not want. The game was beautiful, slick, and at times engrossing. But it was also a pretty thin cookie, with a below average amount of maps, no weapon customization, a lack of any centralized naval combat, and limited guns. Players enjoyed the World War theme and gameplay changes to its new vehicles though. Given the focus on grenades, vehicles did require multiple players to be efficient this time around, in contrast to previous Battlefield games where one player could pretty much overpower the enemy team on his own if he was good enough. Operations was the new mode of choice for many in Battlefield 1, putting players in an attack and defend kind of team-focused gameplay mode across the globe. Operations was praised by those who did not appreciate the changes to Battlefield's Conquest, although balance problems would be noted inside this new mode. Unless the attacking team was significantly better than the defending team, the attacking team would lose most of the time. Another surprise was that naval warfare was kind of absent from vanilla Battlefield 1. Battlefield 1 has 2 maps with naval vehicles, but due to the map design, you mainly just use these boats in the beginning of the map in the initial rush for control points. They're not a big focus, and if you were a fan of it, you were forced to wait more than a year to have a DLC that focused on naval combat in the form of Turning Tides. Now let's talk about the guns. The variant system in Battlefield 1 allows for pretty much zero customization, which is fine considering the time period. But given the small weapon pool as well, and lack of any form of progression beyond simply unlocking a few guns over time, it meant that there wasn't as much replayability in vanilla Battlefield 1 when compared to other Battlefield games. So with a pretty paltry offering of guns, customization, naval combat, and maps, we did expect DICE to bring them into the forefront with the DLC. The DLC schedule started off smoothly. A free map called Giant Shadow was released in December of the same year that the game came out. We thought it was going to be followed up with some very quick DLC shortly thereafter, but we were definitely wrong. The DLC took a long time to be released. I'm talking 6 months. That was when the first DLC came out. They Shall Not Pass, it was called. It had the French army alongside 6 new maps and 2 operations, and small stuff such as, the common things, new weapons, elite classes, vehicles, and a few stationary weapons. This DLC was okay, and it had a unique game mode called Frontlines, but it did suffer from horribly unbalanced operations, balancing problems, and bugs. And since it came out super late, by that time who knows how many people already left for greener pastures. The second DLC, in the name of Tsar, focused on a new faction, the Russians, and pretty much snow maps. It included 6 new maps alongside a new gameplay mode called Supply Drop, where players fought over the control of elite classes. It also had some small stuff like new weapons, vehicles, and 1 elite new class. This DLC didn't suffer from any major problems, but just like They Shall Not Pass, it took months for it to release after its delayed release of summer 2017. By that time, Battlefield 1 launched Revolution Edition, a Battlefield 1 edition with all the pre-order bonuses and DLC for $60. This definitely pissed off loyal players who did spend $120 for that same thing. So you wrap all that together and it wasn't exactly an exciting time to play BF1 unless of course you were a new player. But for everyone else, we were still waiting for a unique and creative Battlefield DLC, hoping it would come soon. A few months later, something happened with the development team with the next 2 DLCs. It could have been the fact that Star Wars Battlefront 2 was going to release in 2 months, or that Battlefield 2018 was being developed by most of the studio, which we now know is coming. The third DLC, Turning Tides, was split into 2 confusingly. The first part, released in December, had nothing to do with naval combat. It just offered 2 new maps, new weapons, and a new operation. Its new mode, Conquest Assault, which was a variant on Conquest, was introduced, which many people actually did not like. The second part of the DLC, North Sea, was released 2 months later, which was kinda weird, but it did feature real naval combat finally. These maps offered multiple torpedo boats on the battlefield along with airplanes, dreadnoughts, and airships. This was a completely new experience that previous DLCs lacked outside of Frontlines and even previous Battlefield games. This was one of the real noticeable changes to DLC in Battlefield 1. Beyond new maps and weapons I'm talking about, we never saw an interesting take on something really new outside of expanding on naval warfare, which is expected on a DLC dedicated to, of course, naval combat. On February 20th, the release trailer for Apocalypse was uploaded to YouTube. It was really strange. Turning Tides just came out a month ago and whoa, the DLC was also going to be released the very same day of the trailer. This had never happened before in the history of Battlefield, and it kinda goes to show you that DICE and EA maybe wanted to drop Battlefield 1 already. When players booted up the game, they quickly discovered that the DLC was obviously rushed. Apocalypse would only include 3 maps, down 1 from Turning Tides and 3 from the first 2 DLCs. And unfortunately, the maps would be straight up copy and pasted from the single player campaign, and many people were scratching their heads when they saw that. I mean, they couldn't do anything new with these maps, different backgrounds, a night version, maybe some fog just to spice up the gameplay? I guess not. Apocalypse was to show the most infamous, hellish battles of World War I. But none of these maps actually do this visually or by its gameplay. The maps were also clearly designed for operations, but since operations and Frontlines were cut, Conquest Assault was once again forced down our throats. Like many people, I just don't find any of the DLCs particularly exciting or evolving of the classic Battlefield 1 we got back in 2016. I feel like I've been playing the same Battlefield 1 for a year and a half now. It just seems like the DLC for Battlefield 1 has been just poorly spaced out, erratically released, and completely vanilla. A year and a half of post-release work is more than most games have to get made from scratch, so there's definitely time to really create something cool. I don't think they brought justice to past Battlefield DLC practices in which DLC was released consistently, constantly, and with lots of variety. This journey of Battlefield 1 just doesn't add up, no matter how you slice it. That's not to say the Battlefield 1 DLC sucks, but when you compare it to previous installments and the hype Battlefield 1 generated during 2016, it kinda dropped the ball, don't you think? It just feels like Battlefield 1 got the half-assed treatment. But what's even more of a question is what I did not cover in this video, which is how they should design the Season Pass to go along with these DLCs. They have got to stop splitting the community with paid map DLC and premium membership and just do what Overwatch does. Everyone gets the new maps and guns, and you open up a cosmetic-only loot box system where people can either pay for crates or pay for skins directly for a little bit more money. That way, you don't have people missing out on great Battlefield DLCs, which I hope come with the next Battlefield game. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. I know this was a little bit of a rant for Battlefield 1, but you know what? I'm a die-hard Battlefield fan, and I've got a lot of opinions on the matter, but this will probably be the last Battlefield 1 video, if not for a long time, then ever. So comment down below, let me know what you think about this whole situation. Like the video if you liked it, downvote it if you hated it, and we'll see you guys in our next video in a few days. Peace, love, happiness until then.